decent crowd to get started. So go ahead and, all right. So thank you everyone for coming. So glad you're all here. This is the second upgrades webinar for the 2205 release. Our first webinar was this Tuesday. We will be covering the same features, or we are covering the same features as we covered on Tuesday. And as noted earlier, the recording for this will be posted on that upgrades post, and any questions that are asked will be posted there as well. I'll throw these in here again for anyone who just arrived. So the Upgrades Hub is where you'll find links to the post, webinar posts, and links to all of the feature posts that we will continue to be releasing. This webinar post is where the recordings will be posted, as well as all the questions and answers that, that we discussed during the session and the previous session. And then the agenda is right here. So again, thank you all for coming. My name is Sarah. I'm one of the educators here at Bywater. I am located in Maryland, so it's great to see some Maryland folks here. And excited to tell you about some of our favorite new features. Katrina, I'll pass it to you.
All right, I'm Katrina Burka. I'm the newest member of our education team. I reside in Texas, but I will always be a Wisconsin girl through and through. So I'm a Texas transplant, but happy to be here on the Bywater team since about July. Heba?
Yeah, and I'm Heba. I work with the education team. So I'm like the first line of education tickets that come in. And I step up when, like, our fearless leader, Donna, is on site with a partner. So happy to share some of the new features in 2205, and I am in Kansas. Looks like all my fellow Kansans were in Monday or Tuesday's webinar, but it's okay. We can't all have neighbors every time.
All right, so we can go ahead and get started with the OPAC and public services features.
All right, I'm going to share my screen. And the first thing I'm going to share with you is 30288. So now when you go into Tools and HTML customizations, if you have permissions to edit HTML customizations, and if you have permissions to for top-level administrative permissions, you will see these two links here to the OPACUserJS and OPACUserCSS. These still direct to the administration portion of the staff client where you can edit this jQuery or CSS on your OPAC, but the links right here just provide a more consolidated way for you to edit and customize your OPAC, all the tools for that. In addition to those two links, you also have, we've moved two of the display locations from system preferences into HTML customizations. So the first one is OpacMoreSearches, and OpacMoreSearches, where you'll find that on the OPAC itself, is right up here on the upper right. So after your defaulted search categories up here, these three here, Bywater Solutions, sign up for newsletter, and town website, those are the OPACMoreSearches area. The second one is OPACMySummaryNote. And you'll find the OPACMySummaryNote when you are logged in to the OPAC, and I go to my account. The OPACMySummaryNote is what you'll see right at the top of the page for your summary within the OPAC. The next feature I want to share with you requires enabling a system preference. So this is 14242. And the system preference we have to make sure is enabled is called OPAC Suggestion Autofill. We have it enabled on this training site. So when I come over and I'm in the OPAC, I'm logged in, and I select your purchase suggestions to make a new purchase suggestion, now I have the ability to enter an ISBN number, and it will search within Google Books if I have that system preference enabled. So in this case, I have an ISBN that I want to search for, have a book that I think my library should buy because they don't have it. When I select this Search Google Books button, it found it, and it automatically then populates the title and author of that so that I don't have to manually type it in. And then it's also the exact title and author as found in the ISBN, which makes it easier on your purchasing teams, your acquisitions teams, to get the correct title your patrons are looking for. The next system preference, or the next feature that I want to share with you, is 29526. Also within the OPAC, now in addition to being able to delete my checkout history, I also, as a patron, have the ability to immediately delete my hold history or delete both my checkout and hold history at the same time. This isn't an off-on preference, it's on. So those privacy settings, it gives patrons more flexibility to control their privacy settings within the OPAC and within your ILS. Are there any questions? I'm going a little fast. Are there any questions so far? Oh, okay. The next one I want to share with you then is a long system preference looking at 13188. This is a new system preference. It is patron self-modification mandatory field. This is a new system preference in addition to patron self-registration borrower mandatory field. So there are two different sets of mandatory fields now for when you initially create a self-registered patron and when they go in to modify that patron record. So here you'll see that we have some fields that are mandatory the first time that you create a self-registered patron account on the OPAC. And then the first time or the next time I log in to make any edits to that account, there are different fields then that are required on any modifications of that account. So here you'll see the modification looks like, the modification required fields are under your personal details. You'll see that surname, first name, zip code, and email are required on any modifications I make to my account. But if I log out and select to register here, this takes me to that initial self-registration page, and you'll see that here, zip code is not required, surname, first name are, email, and password. So that just gives you more flexibility to identify what fields are required when initially creating an account and then when modifying it later. The next feature is another new system preference. We're looking at 17018. We now have OPAC advanced search types in addition to advanced search types. What's neat about this is that now on the staff client, when I go to an advanced search, I have item type, collection, and shelving location available to me. You can configure those separately now for the staff client and in the OPAC. So if I do an advanced search in the OPAC, I have chosen not to show shelving locations as an advanced search criteria, and that is controlled by the system preference OPAC advanced search types. That's the new system preference that has been added. You can add or delete those. You divide them by pipes in the code to add or delete those in the different views.
And, Katrina, if I may, there was a question that just came in about the self-modification mandatory fields.
Mm-hmm.
What if you were dealing with a customer who does not have email?
Then you would want to make that system that you're going to have to put in something at something.something for Koha to register that you have entered an email. If you have patrons who do not have email, they won't be able to do the self-registration. Then on the OPAC, they would have to come to a service desk to do a registration.
Yeah, I think that's just to point out, as Katrina is saying, the patron self-modification system preference is different from what staff would need to, the staff required fields if you're creating or modifying a patron from the staff interface. So the idea with this one, at least as I understand it, is that if you are registering or modifying your account online, you most likely have an email, but you can set them required however you would like.
Yeah. And those are just examples that I gave for this one of what would be required but you can select, you have lots of different options for what fields on that patron record that you want to be required in the modification or in the initial registration, that you have a lot of control over how much or how little you want to be required on those forms. Okay. And then lastly, the last thing I want to share with you is 30136. This is one of those little things that might make a big difference. So let's just say here, I'm going to search our site for bird. So I love birds. And we have a lot of results. We have 168 results, and I get going, and it's really cool because this floats like a lot of things do in Koha up here at the top to help me navigate my search history. But man, I am only about halfway, 3/4 of the way through the page, and I want to get back up to the top to modify my search. And now you'll see down here on the bottom right, we have this really cool green button that is a back to the top. So I don't have to navigate away from the page, press back or refresh. I can scroll, and now I have this nifty little green button with an arrow on it that sends me right back to the top of my search results. So small feature enhancement, but it might make a big difference in patron searchability and navigability on the OPAC.
Any other questions about any of those features? Right, hop over into the next section in that case. And share my screen. Okay. All right, so this first one is not a whole lot to look at, but it is an exciting one nonetheless. Keep moving my screen around here. All right, so this first feature is 29346. It is a real-time holds queue update. This is sponsored by Montgomery County Public Libraries, and it's one that again, a lot of people are excited about. I'm going to my screen. So this is a new system preference. It's really about the only thing that I can show for this one, called real-time holds queue. And you can set this to either enable or disable. It will be set to disable by default. So if that is something that you want to try using, you would need to go in and switch that system preference. It can be used either in addition to the holds queue cron or instead of the holds queue cron. There's not really a better or worse. It really just kind of depends on what works for your library and your workflows. So what this system preference does, if it is set to enable, is that it will use background jobs to enable the holds queue for a specific bib when it is triggered by specific actions. That includes items being added or deleted from the bib, holds being canceled, filled, modified, reverted, suspended, unsuspended, all those sorts of things. When any of those triggering actions happen, Koha will use background jobs to update the holds queue for that specific bib without having to rebuild the entire queue. So it can speed things up because really there's just the update for whatever bib was triggered rather than having to rebuild the whole thing. Again, you can use them both if you wish, or you can just use one of them. It really just depends on what is best for you and your library. If you are, around here, if you are using this feature and not using the cron, just keep in mind that the holds queue will not change for items that are not triggered by one of those actions. So if you want things to shift around every so often, you may want to still use the cron in addition to this feature.
And there's actually a question of why would you want to use both in the chat, which sounds like a perfect segue from what you were just saying.
Yes, exactly. Thank you for pointing out the question. That is a great question. It won't make sense for every library to use both, but for some, if, for instance, you have multiple locations and you want, if something has not been found within a certain amount of time or within one run of the cron at the first location, you can use the cron the cron will kind of shuffle everything and potentially move that hold to another location. So it's a way to have more activity and movement in the cron, even if there is not one of these actions that triggers the rebuilding for a given bib. It will also partly depend on whether you're running things when they're open or closed. So there are some other factors, but since this feature only makes rebuilds when there is a trigger for a specific bib, it can, still using the cron can, I will explain cron in a moment. Using the cron in addition can make it so that items do move around more, which some libraries will like and some libraries won't. So cron is, cron job is a automated process. There are a number of them within Koha that they do all sorts of things. One of them is to build the holds queue. So at this right now, libraries who are using the holds queue sometimes have that cron job run every hour, for instance, to rebuild the holds queue. They do all sorts of other things like generate messages, send messages, a whole bunch of automatic sort of processes that happen without staff having to take specific action to make them happen. So generally, that's what a cron is. It's a very non-systems explanation of what a cron is, at least. One of the questions that came up on this one was the specific actions that trigger the rebuild. So there is a post about this feature, and I'll be updating the post with a list of those specific actions. There were some other questions about how it will affect like timing and system resources. Some of those I will have to check with developers on, but there will be some updates on that blog post, on the webinar post with questions that have been asked about this feature in particular. All right, anything else about this one? Oh, okay. Yeah, it seems like cron is not specific to Koha or Bywater. It's, yeah. All right, so the next one that we've got is 21729, and then sort of related 30183. So the first one, when reverting a hold, the expiration date should be reset. All right, so this one works better for demonstration. So previously, prior to this upgrade, all hold expiration dates were saved in the expiration date field in the reserves table. This was a problem because when a hold was reverted, so it had been filled, assigned an expiration date based on your reserves max pickup delay setting. When the hold was then reverted, the expiration date from that reserves max pickup delay setting was retained. So that meant that if a hold was reverted and someone had 7 days to pick it up, the sort of 7-day cancellation date was retained, even though at that point someone was back on the holds list. So it oftentimes was not enough time for patrons to pick up a hold. So what 2205 does here is it creates a separate field called patron expiration date for patron generated expiration dates. This improves functionality. The other change with this is that when holds without patron generated expiration dates are reverted, Koha behaves differently than it used to. So I'm going to demonstrate this one because it works better to see. So for instance, if I go ahead and place a hold on this bib, place it for myself. I'm going to say that if I cannot get this hold before January 15th, I do not want it. So I'll go ahead and place the hold. 20, and then I'm going to hop into the logs to show you what this looks like. All right, so we've got the hold that I just created. And if we look through our information on the hold, so if we go back here, we can see that the expiration date is set for January 15th, 2023. And over here in our log, we've got patron expiration date of January 15th, 2023. And then at this point, the expiration date is January 15th, 2023. In previous versions of Koha, there was just this expiration date column. So this is the only one that existed. This other patron expiration date column did not exist. If I now go ahead and fill that hold, confirm our hold. If I now go over to the holds list, look at this here first. If I now refresh this, we can see that the expiration date, the expiration date on the hold is December 10th, because these holds are only being held for 2 days. But Koha has retained the expiration date that I initially set for my hold not needed after date for January 15th. So the difference here is that in older versions of Koha, once the hold was filled, the expiration date field, since that's the only one that existed, Koha had no place to save the hold not needed after date that patrons had set. It was just overwritten entirely. So if I come back over to my hold, we can see the expiration date here updated to December 10th as well. But if I go and revert my hold, we now have the expiration date that I initially set, because Koha is now able to pull from that patron expiration date column instead of only relying on that expiration date column. So while in previous versions, this would still say 12/10/22, now it goes back to 1/15/23. So that's really handy so that you don't have to, staff don't have to go and clear out that expiration date so that holds will actually have enough time to fill. It's also handy for troubleshooting when tickets come into us. So we're excited about this one.
Sarah, there was a follow-up question on that.
Yes.
And this is from Anne. Would the pickup by dates modify the holds queue? I.e., someone needs an item within 2 weeks, but another person doesn't mind waiting for 3 months. I believe she's asking about holds priority, which is a separate.
Yeah, if someone needs something within 2 weeks, that in itself is not going to have any effect on the queue. That would be sort of a separate thing. Koha, unless a hold is suspended, Koha just looks at the order in which holds were placed, or if you're using local holds priority, it can be a combination of the patrons, either the home library or the pickup library, and then the items home or holding library. But how long someone has indicated as their hold not needed after date is not taken into account in building the holds queue. The person who doesn't need it for 3 months could suspend their hold and then reactivate it closer to when they needed it. But if it's active, Koha will just look at the dates where the date that the hold was actually placed. Object,
there was, yeah, you saw that.
Yeah. So object is this is, in this case, it's the reserve ID, which is the number assigned to that specific hold. This is not something that you would normally need to go in, or that libraries normally have any reason to go in and look at. It's mostly something that we use for troubleshooting. But I came in here just to show sort of what those different columns looked like. But for this one, it was the automatic number assigned to that hold once I placed it. So the other piece of this is if I reverted a hold that did not have a hold not needed after date assigned to it. So like if this person placed a hold and they did not have a date here, if I go and revert the hold, that's fine, I can override that. If I reverted a hold that did not have a date set here, Koha would clear the expiration date instead of retaining the date generated by reserve's max pickup delay. So that does mean that you might need to eventually cancel that hold if the patron does not need it after a certain amount of time. But the logic is that clearing the expiration date is more patron friendly because it gives them more time to actually have the hold filled, and then staff can take action to cancel it if they need to without Koha canceling it before it can actually be filled. The patron max pickup delay field a date will be created there, either if staff have a date set here, or if patrons are placing a hold and they set a hold not needed after date, which brings us to our second one here. So this again was 30108, and it is the ability to allow making hold dates required. So what this system preference does, jump in here, oops. So OPAC mandatory hold dates is the name of the system preference. And it is that when placing holds from the OPAC, staff can indicate that patrons either do not have to make any hold dates mandatory, have to make a start date mandatory, an end date, or both dates. So for here, for instance, I have that patrons have to make both hold dates mandatory. And if I hop over to the OPAC and try to place a hold, we can see that these are both required. If I went and changed that system preference, one or neither of them could be required. So when I'm placing this hold, whatever date that I put into this hold not needed after will be the date that goes into that patron expiration date field. Any other questions about these couple of Close. Oh. All right, the next few are more quick ones to show. So we've got adding the hold expiration date to the holds awaiting pickup report. So what this does is it just adds a new column to the holds awaiting pickup report. It will be in both tabs when there are holds here. It adds the actual expiration date of the hold here, which is handy because previously you could see how long it had been waiting and when the hold was placed. But from here, you could not actually see when it expired. So if you're not automatically canceling holds, having this here is really handy, especially if you have a patron who just asked for one extra day. You can quickly check here what one extra day is and then cancel the hold if they don't make it in that extra day without having to click into the actual hold. The next one we've got is 29760, which is showing the patron category in the holds queue. Another straightforward one. Over here in our holds queue, we just have a new column for patron category. This is handy if you have reasons why you want to fill some holds before others or want to be able to do them in sections. Just like the other columns, you can sort by this column. So go ahead and do that. Or you can filter by the column. So nice, quick and easy one that will hopefully make some libraries' lives easier. And then we've got 30081, which is to display the item type in the patron's holds table. Another quick one to show you. So over here in the holds table, we've got a new column of item type. And so what this will do is if a hold is filled, we've got the item type here. If a hold has an item specific, if the hold was item specific, the item type will be here. If it is just a bib level hold and has not been filled yet, there will not be an item type because Koha does not know which item is going to fill it, and different items on a bib can have different item types. So that is can be another handy one. All right, and now we've got 26346, which is adding an option to make a public list editable by staff only. So this one I think is going to be really neat for a lot of libraries. So previously, when you had a list on your OPAC, the options for who could edit it was either nobody, only the owner, or anybody seen that list. The problem with that was that if you set it to anybody seen that list, so that for instance, other staff members could add to the list, it also meant that patrons who are logged into their accounts on the OPAC could make changes. So it limited how many libraries wanted to use it because they did not want patrons going in and messing with their lists. So what this bug does is it adds another option, which is staff only. So if you've got this set, if you now have a list set to public so that it does show on the OPAC and then staff only, that means that staff will be able to make changes to lists without having to worry about patrons making changes. One of the questions that came up in the last session was the permission that is needed for this, and that is probably going to be seeing some changes. Right now, it is the edit catalog permission, so anyone with that edit catalog permission can make changes to lists that have this staff only marker. There is another sort of related permission called edit public lists. That is just to change either the name, the settings, or the permissions on the list, but not the contents. There is a bug, it's 30418. There's not, it would be in a future release if it ends up coming to fruition at all, would be to add a setting and permission for public lists more specific than edit catalog. So if you did not want someone to have the full edit catalog permission, but still wanted them to be able to edit lists, there potentially in the future will be a separate permission for that. But at this point, it's the edit catalog permission.
There's a lot of excitement for this feature, Sarah.
Yeah, this is always one that, talking about it in training, I love the feature of lists, but so many libraries understandably did not want to use it. So excited that some people are looking forward to this one. All right, and then finally, we have some changes related to automatic emails that can go out when patrons register, new patrons register. So sort of overarching change with this is a change to system preference. So we've got the system preference called, here. So the system preference called auto email new user is replacing what used to be called auto email OPAC user. It's a more accurate name because what the preference does when it is set to send is automatically send emails to newly registered patrons. There was some confusion with the previous name because OPAC user made it sound like it was only for self-registered patrons. So the name has changed. What is required to have this email send has also changed. It is any new patron, if you have this set to send, any new patron who's created with an email address will get the email. They used to also have to have their card number, user ID, and password entered into their account for the email to send, but now it is just email. So that hopefully will make it more useful for libraries. The other pieces of this are, I'll start from the bottom. So 30214 is to send a welcome notice for new patrons added via self-registration. So the previously, as I noted, the system preference only sent to patrons who were added by staff, but now it includes patrons who self-register. So anyone who self-registers when this is set to send and has an email address entered on their account, which presumably they will because they're on the computer, will have that email sent to them. Seeing a question, can you set this to email only one patron category? So there's a separate preference for emails that go out just to self-registered patrons, if that's sort of the category that you're thinking of. I will have to check on limiting it to one category otherwise. So I'll check on that, and that will be in the updated post. Second piece of this, working backwards, 9097, which is add an option to trigger welcome mail manually. So this is really nice because you can now, if someone did not have this email sent when they initially registered because maybe they didn't have an email address on their account, or if you do not want to have this send automatically to every patron, but you want staff to send it out individually when they register a patron, there's now a way to do that. So if you go here into more, and then do send welcome email, like that. Of course, they've already gotten one, but it has a welcome email in their account now. It's over here. Also get the nice display, the new notice display, which a lot of libraries are liking so far instead of kind of expanding this page. So that you can always sort of resend that if they didn't get it the first time, or if you want to send it at any time, not just when they register. And yes, there is a Monday Minutes for that part of it. So definitely recommend checking that out. The third piece is that you can also have this email sent when you are importing patrons. So we've got self-registration, we've got patrons just created from the staff interface. But if you're here in tools and importing patrons, there's a new flag to send an email to new patrons. So that just means that patrons who are brought in this way can also be included in that email. Last thing I'll point out is that the notice name for this is welcome. If you have been using the account details notice to send out these emails, which is what was used in the past, if you had any customization there, that will need to be manually moved over to the new welcome notice. That is not going to happen automatically. So just keep that in mind if you will be wanting to use this welcome notice that is replacing account details, and you'll need to go ahead and then customize it however you would like. If you have any questions about customizing it, please, as always, open a ticket. It does use template toolkit, so it can be a little trickier, but we're always happy to help. Any other questions? Oh, I see the new patrons time frame set for a range, new this week, new this month. It's really just as they are created, unless I'm misunderstanding your question. But as patrons are created, the email will go out. It's not, it just kind of happens as it happens. The email that you can send from patrons' accounts, that can happen anytime. That option under the More button to send the email will be there indefinitely. So you can always send that out. Any other questions, or did I miss any in the chat? Oh, okay. All right, can there be, well, multiple welcome notices? That was one of the things that came up in the other session. I don't believe there can be multiple ones, but I am going to verify that, and I'll update the posts with that. And then what happens if there's a loss, if there's a lost card? I guess I'm not clear on the sort of circumstances that would lead to a lost card having one of these emails sent. So if you're able to add some more details about what you're thinking there, I'm sorry, I think I'm just not fully understanding the question. Since these are automated, there's a risk that they'd wind up in people's trash or spam. I am not a systems person. I don't think that it's any more risk than any other email from Koha, because it's only going to that specific address. It's not going out to everyone. It's not like going out to 500 people at once. But I will check with systems and see what the risk is on that. Send the welcome email for lost card. Yes, the welcome notice can be personalized. It can contain hyperlinks. The default notice that is here has a link to, or is built to have a link to your OPAC. But you can change that. You can add other hyperlinks. You can add links to social media, really whatever you would like. Send the welcome email for lost card. The only time when someone would, unless it's when the patron is registering, the email will really only ever go out when, getting patrons up here, if a staff member goes in here and clicks send welcome email. So I'm sorry, I think I'm still not quite understanding the question. I would say, let's keep chatting about this in chat, but I'm going to pass it to Heba to get started on the rest of our features.
Yeah, and before I dive into tools, I actually got a private message from one of our Bywater staff members who was watching the webinar with us. And when the mention of using dummy email addresses on accounts was mentioned, our systems folks were like, oh, please don't do that. Please don't do that. It can make emails bounce. So if you do have a population where people do not have emails, that would need to be addressed either at a policy level within your library or put in a ticket with us, and we can talk about how you can make Koha work with that. But the big takeaway was, please don't do that. All right, so let me go ahead and share my screen there. So I'm going to kind of talk you through some of the new tools and features and the admin side of things. So first up, we have one that is going to make a lot of lives easier. That's kind of the theme of this update. There's not like huge things, but there's lots of really great little things. So if you have ever struggled with the inventory tool, there is a lot more options now for how to generate your lists and which pieces of inventory you're looking at. So the new addition is that now you can add collection code to your filters. So you can narrow it down by branch and shelving location and collection code. And if you really want to get granular, you can add in the item call number. The rest of that was there, but the collection code was the missing part. So we all know all the libraries use collection codes, shelving locations, all of that just a little bit differently. This makes this tool a lot more flexible and functional for the different setups that people have. Any questions or comments on that before I move on? All right. Another tool, and this is an enhancement that was sponsored by our partner Fargo Public Library. When you have staged MARC records, and I've got a batch here, I matched it on the ISBN, and I told it that I was generally going to bring in the new record when something matched. I can take a look at it and decide if I want to go ahead and write that over, or if, you know, I want to ignore this particular one and keep the existing one. So it gives you a little bit more on the fly decision making whether you want to ignore or bring in. We had a question in Tuesday's webinar about whether this worked for authorities as well. I have not had a chance to follow up on that, but that will be in the blog post. And there is also a Monday Minutes about that is on our website. Any other questions about this one? All right. Another nice tool that is getting a little bit more functionality is this automatic item modifications by age tool. Previously, this really only worked for, I have these books that are new, and after 3 months, I want them to not be new. It only looked at date accessioned for any changes. Now we have more ability to customize automated changes on our items. So that it does still need to key to a date field on the item record. So that includes things like accessioned, replacement price date, date last borrowed, date last seen, damaged on, any of the status update changes on. And then you can set your other conditions. So I made a sample rule that if something hasn't been seen in a year and it's not on loan, let's mark it missing. This one does need a cron job to run. That part isn't new. And then any existing rules that you already had in here will still use date accessioned as that age field. So if you want to revisit your rules after this point, you can, but anything pre-existing is not changed. Going down the list of goodies here. And I'm going to show you a particular record to highlight a couple of things here. So we have another enhancement from bug 29406. Sorry, wrong bug. 29824 that lets you edit your quick spine labels. I might be sharing it in the wrong way to do that. Can you see my little pop-up box with the spine labels or no? Okay. Let me change my share. All right. So now, can you see it now? Okay, so before, this is just the quick, like what you see is what you get. You can print it or not print it. Those are your options. Now we can quick edit it. So maybe we've gotten a new directive from above that says we want, instead of J, that doesn't mean anything to our people, make it Juve. So it's juvenile, it's more clear. We can lock that back up and then print it. So you can do on the fly editing. It does not change the item call number in Koha. It's just if you need to make any changes for what displays for your patrons when you're printing out your quick spine labels. And you can access that both from the item level, that print label, or from the tool quick spine label creator, where you put in the barcode and do it one by one. Wrong label. Quick spine label creator. So you'd scan in your barcode. It's going to give you the same option with that little box to edit or not. The other thing I wanted to point out was the improvement that came from bug 29406, which was the change in the OPAC suppression message. So you can suppress OPAC or suppress records altogether from the OPAC with the 942N, I believe. And there used to be a message up at the very top of the record that says it was suppressed in the OPAC. But if you came down here to the OPAC view, you'd still get a link that might or might not work, depending on whether what you were doing with hiding records in your catalog. This just gives you a real clear, it's suppressed in the OPAC, there's no link, there's nothing to click. Your patrons cannot see that record. I'm seeing some notifications pop up with chat and Q&A. Do I need to stop and answer any questions?
So there's one in Q&A. Some of it is just in chat. It's kind of from previous conversations, but in Q&A, can you customize the font or font size?
On the quick one, I will check on that. I believe the answer is no, that if you want to really get into the details, you need to use like the full label creator, but I am going to double check that and we'll update the post on that. And that does also rely on a couple of system preferences. Spine label auto print needs to be set to don't, and spine label format will let you add some fields. So there's a little bit of customization, but I'll double check with the extent of that. The next one, we are going to move on to the admin updates. So the first one is a new system preference that is kind of a groundwork preference. So this is enabling two-factor authentication on accounts. So with this enabled, staff have the ability to go in and under this More tab, manage two-factor authentication. It is going to require setup with a secondary app. It's not locked down to any particular product. The Koha manual recommends something with a cloud backup so that if you lose the device that is on, you can still get in. So the system preference is disabled by default. Enabling it just gives your staff the ability to do it. It does not enforce a requirement. That is a system preference that's coming down the line in 2211. So this is just a soft launch for libraries that are interested in exploring that. The next one are a couple of enhancements that come to us courtesy of our partners in Colorado, the Colorado Correctional Institutions, part of the Colorado Library Consortium. And this introduces the ability to let passwords expire by category. So if you want staff to have to reset their passwords every 30 days to comply with whatever policies you're beholden to, you can set a password expiration time frame. So, we can say 30 here. I have literally just chosen a patron category at random. The other place you'll see that pop up, let's look at. The other place you'll see that on an account is in this library use field. So if their password is a category that is set to expire, there will be a password expiration date on there. And then when they go to log into the OPAC with their now expired password, they have an ability to trigger a reset password email that they can do. And like most changes to your patron categories, it will not enforce one on existing accounts. It will create that expectation moving forward with new accounts created. All right, and then this next one is, I think, one of the ones that we as staff are very much excited about, but partners have been really excited as we've told them about it. So this one brings a major enhancement to reports. And this is from an old bug. So this one's been a long time coming, bug 5697. And this gives us improved function of report results. So if you have a report that has any of these columns, borrower number, card number, item number, biblio number, we used to have to hard code those in as URLs. And they printed hideously. They were no fun to use, but they made it a lot easier to use in Koha. Now we have links that actually do things, multiple things. You can choose which thing you want it to do. So from borrower number, you can view the patron, go right into the edit screen, or move right into checkout. Card number is going to just give you a checkout option. Item number gives you the option to edit or view. It says record, it is actually directly into the item. So if I go into item to edit, it's giving me the item edit screen that I can make changes from directly. And then biblio number works like item, and it'll take you to the edit bib option. So improved functionality to report things. And this only works on plain text ones. So if you do any group formatting or you're aliasing things differently, it may not work 100% that way. But just the raw fields there will give you useful tools. In addition to the things you could already do, like your batch record or your batch modifications from report results. And we got another question.
Yeah, a question came into chat. Do we need to undo those saved queries with the hard coding of the link on?
I have to check, but I think the answer is going to be yes. Because the way those links worked is you could set your URL to a specific function, but it's not going to give you that drop down of all of the functions. I'll test it with a report and update the post when I have a definitive answer, though. And then the last one is just kind of a fun enhancement. That is the barcode image generator. So the thing we're thinking people might like to use this for is popping up a QR code. So we can set up a link to our website. It'll generate the code that we can use. It'll also give us an embeddable link that we can use. This does not give any inbuilt analytics tracking. So if you want to see what people are scanning off of a flyer that you've put up, it will not innately have that ability. If you have analytics on your site and you have it tied to that landing page, you may be able to track some of that. That is not the only barcode type. You can use other ones. It'll also like yell at you if you have the wrong input there. So it'll key you to the right input for that type of barcode that you're trying to generate. Any other questions about anything that I've covered and zoomed through? Because I know we're at 3:02, 4:02 if you're on the East Coast. So we don't want to keep you too long over the time we promised.
There was one more question that came in, but I did want to know from another staff member who has also been playing with the new reports function that reports who currently have the links hard-coded in, those will not break, they will still work. So that is great. That's less updating that should need to be done.
I was less worried about breakage than I am about, can you actually unlock the multiple features? That's the part I haven't tested yet.
Okay, that's a good question. Yes. And then
but I will test that.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Oh, and then something that came up as a follow-up question on the reports the last webinar was, can you still like print it out and it'll just print plain text, which was the kind of the bugbear of putting those links in, because if you exported it to Excel, you'd just get a long, hideous URL. So now it'll give you the functionality in Koha and you can print it and download it reasonably.
The other question that came in on that is the hide data menus option browser specific or in a cookie, or should it be available for regardless of browser? Back on the reports.
I'm not understanding the question. Let me read it.
Yeah. From the
okay, yeah. I see. Hide data menus option. I think that's just, you could toggle that on and off. That is not, I will double check. I do not believe that is anything that is configured in any way. You can just do it or not do it.
Yeah, I believe that should also, I also believe that should just be there, whatever browser you're using. Just
yeah, so if you like it the old way, you can keep it that way.
Oh, I see. Does it remember your preference is the question. Okay.
Oh, okay. Let's try that out. Let's go back in. So we've turned it off there. We're going to go back in, find that report. We're going to run it again. It remembered. So
I am curious if it remembers like next time you go in and run a different report. But that is a good question. I'm curious.
Yeah, I'll do some testing on that and update. All right.
Any other questions from anyone? All right. Well, in that case, I know we're a couple minutes past the hour. Appreciate everyone sticking around, everyone who is able to. And thank you everyone for coming. Really glad to have you all here. The Q&A session is going to be on January 11th. Love to see you there. In the meantime, keep on sending us tickets for any questions you have, and you will be notified when the recordings and the questions are posted on the blog post or updated.
I just remembered,
yes.
Everyone should have their dates that their updates are coming in their staff client now. Those have been being pushed out to sites this week. So
yes, thank you. Good point. All right. Thanks, everyone. Take care.